There is a prison most people will never escape from. Not because the walls are too thick, but because the walls are invisible. And the strangest part, you built them yourself. One desperate glance, one unread message, one nervous thought. What do they think of me? You felt it, haven't you? That quiet panic before you post something online. That tightening in your chest when someone doesn't reply. That rehearsed version of yourself you perform at work, at dinner, at the gym. Always slightly adjusted, always slightly smaller than who you actually are. Most people assume this is shyness or low confidence, but it goes much deeper than that. What's actually happening is this. Somewhere along the way, you handed the remote control of your inner world to people who are too busy staring at their own reflection to ever press play. And that decision, that one invisible surrender, is shaping your choices, your courage, your relationships, and your entire trajectory in life. Today, we're going to break that, not with motivation, not with hype, with something sharper, truth. Here's something modern psychology confirms, and the Stoics understood 2,000 years ago. You are not being watched nearly as much as you think. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect. The mind inflates our own visibility. It tells us that our stumble, our awkward laugh, our failed attempt is being projected onto a giant screen for everyone to analyze. But the audience isn't there. People are drowning in their own internal noise. They are replaying their regrets, calculating their finances, fearing their futures. You are a passing shadow in the corner of their mental screen, noticed briefly, forgotten completely. Think about the last time someone embarrassed themselves in front of you. Maybe they tripped, said the wrong word, froze mid-sentence. Do you still think about it? Of course not. Yet you still remember your version of that same moment, years later, lying awake, cringing. Marcus Aurelius observed that human beings are locked inside their own experience, absorbed in their own interior world. That wasn't a cynical observation. It was a gift. Because if no one is watching the way you imagine, then you are free. Free to try, free to fail, free to begin again without anyone keeping score. The cage only exists because you believe the audience is real. But here's what most self-help books won't tell you. Even when you know this truth intellectually, you still can't shake the feeling. And there's a reason for that. Keep watching. Needing approval isn't weakness. It's an old wound wearing a very sophisticated costume. At some point in your early life, love or safety felt conditional. You learned, consciously or not, that being accepted meant adjusting yourself. Being visible meant performing. Being worthy meant earning. And your nervous system filed that away as survival information. So today, when someone goes quiet, your brain doesn't register it as they're probably tired. It registers it as a threat. When someone doesn't clap for your success, your brain doesn't say they're distracted. It says, you weren't enough. This is not a character flaw. It's a calibration error. Your mind is running on old code, written for a world that no longer exists. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of history's most powerful philosophers, understood this intimately. He had nothing, no freedom, no status, no external validation of any kind, yet he wrote some of the most psychologically liberated words ever recorded. His insight was radical. The only things that can wound you are the things you've decided matter. The opinion of someone you barely know, that only has power because you assigned it power. The silence of someone you're trying to impress, that only hurts because you made their reaction your measure of worth. When you find the wound, you stop mistaking it for wisdom. There's something darker here that we need to name directly. When you need approval, you become predictable. And predictable people are easy to control. Not through chains or commands, but through the careful distribution of warmth and withdrawal. A compliment given strategically. Silence used as punishment. Validation offered only when obedience is delivered. You've experienced this. The friend who only shows up when you agree with them. The partner who grows cold when you try to set a boundary. The colleague who praises you in public and undermines you in private. These dynamics aren't accidental. They are the natural result of what happens when one person knows they hold the supply of something the other person desperately needs. Approval is the currency of control. And here's what no one tells you. The moment you stop needing it, the entire transaction collapses. You can't be guilted by someone whose opinion you've stopped outsourcing your worth to. You can't be shamed by someone whose judgment no longer reaches you. The Stoics had a term for this, apatheia, not emotional numbness, but a state of inner sovereignty where external conditions lose their grip on your behavior. It's not coldness, it's clarity. And once you feel it, even briefly, you understand why the ancient philosophers treated it as the highest form of freedom. What changes first, when you start living this way, might surprise you. It's not your confidence. It's not your relationships. It's something much quieter and far more powerful. When you stop seeking validation from the outside world, something remarkable happens. You get very, very honest with yourself because for years, other people's reactions have been telling you who you are. Their approval made you feel capable. Their silence made you feel invisible. Their praise made you feel worthy. Their criticism made you feel broken. You were outsourcing your self-concept, handing it to others like a coat you couldn't hold. When you take it back, suddenly the questions change. Not what do they think of me, but what do I think of myself? Not will they approve, but does this align with who I'm becoming? Not will they remember this, but will I respect myself tomorrow for the choice I made today? This is a harder conversation because the world can be lied to, impressions can be managed, personas can be maintained indefinitely, but you cannot lie to your own mirror. Marcus Aurelius spent years writing his meditations, not for an audience, not for publication, not for legacy. He wrote them entirely for himself, a private dialogue between who he was and who he was trying to become. No one was watching, no one was clapping, no one was there to validate the effort, and yet he created one of the most enduring works of philosophical discipline in human history. That is what happens when you redirect the energy of approval seeking into something real. You stop performing, you start building. The fear of failure is almost never about the failure itself. It's about the imagined audience watching the failure. Take away the audience, and the fear transforms into something usable. Think about the risks you haven't taken, the conversations you haven't started, the ideas you haven't shared, the versions of yourself you haven't become. Now ask, was the obstacle really failure, or was it being seen failing? Because those are fundamentally different fears. Failure is an event, a data point, a temporary state. Being seen failing feels like an identity, permanent, defining, final. But here's what the Stoics and modern neuroscience both agree on. Failure processed quickly becomes competence. Failure avoided becomes stagnation. The people you admire most, the ones who seem genuinely alive, genuinely purposeful, genuinely free, they have failed spectacularly, repeatedly, publicly sometimes, and they are not defined by those failures because they never waited for the world to grade them. They graded themselves, and then they kept going. The moment you stop asking what will people say if I fail and start asking what will I learn when I do, failure stops being a threat. It becomes a teacher with no attendance policy. Let's go somewhere deeper for a moment. There's a question that most people never ask themselves. Genuinely, honestly, who would I be if no one was watching? Not the version of you that knows someone might see. Not the version adjusted for social media or family dinners or professional impressions. The version that exists when the room is empty and the lights are low. That person, that unobserved, unaudited version of you, is the most important person you'll ever meet. Because everything you build in the external world will eventually age, fade, collapse, or be forgotten. The only thing that compounds over time, the only investment that survives, is character. And character is not built in front of an audience. It's built in the private decisions, the quiet disciplines, the moments when no one is watching, and you choose the harder, truer path anyway. Seneca wrote that the good life is not one others admire. It's one you can live without regret. That sentence changes everything when it lands. Not a life that looks right, a life that is right to you. You will never be truly free as long as you need the world's permission to exist. Not free in the way that matters, not free in the marrow. Because the need for approval is the most elegant trap ever constructed. It looks like ambition, it feels like connection, it sounds like caring what people think. But underneath it, at the core, it is fear. Fear that without their validation, you are not enough. And here is the only counter-truth that dissolves it. You were enough before anyone decided to agree. The warrior who needs nothing from the crowd becomes something the crowd cannot ignore. Not because they perform, because they are. Walk forward, build in silence, live by your own measure. The world will catch up eventually, and even if it doesn't, you'll have been free. If something in this video shifted something inside you, that shift is worth following. Subscribe. Stay close. There's more to uncover.